Hello again, Scratchers. This is the second part of my tutorial into how to make a really professional quiz. In the last tutorial I showed you how to make the question slides, and in this quiz to keep it simple, just have four question slides all about fungus. First question slide named slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, slide 4. Every slide has 4 possible answers, and the final slide is there just to give us the score. Now, most of our coding is going to go on a sprite, which we haven't yet made, but we do need 1 or 2 blocks of coding on our stage. So I'm clicking on code, and on events pulling out when the green flag is clicked, then going to looks, and when the game starts I want the first slide to appear, so switch black backdrop to slide 1, and then we haven't yet done the coding for this, but when they get the correct answer we need to go to the second slide. So click on control again, events. When I receive message 1, obviously probably easier just to make it clearer, so we're going to click on new message and next slide. So when I receive a message saying next slide, I want the next slide to appear, so I click on looks and switch the backdrop to the next backdrop, and that's basically all the coding we need for the stage. So we're now going to move away from our stage onto our sprite. You could keep the cat, but I'm going to delete the cat and just draw my own sprite, a tiny little dot, because I want something unobtrusive, and we can move him just down to where the quest is going to be. Even that's probably too large, so I'm just going to make him 80%. Click away, and then we can click on code and we can start putting all our code onto our sprite 1. Let's change the name to question so we know what it's doing, and we can start coding onto our question. So the first thing we need to do is to code in our variables. So we put in when the green flag is clicked, then we go down to variables. Variables are going to be the question number. Variables are things that changes, so question number 1, question number 2, question number 3, our points and our final score. So make a variable, and the first variable, question number. For all sprites, click on OK, and then when the game starts we set the question number to 1, and we want that to be shown on the screen. Then our second variable is going to be points, and the points obviously are going to be set to 0 when the game starts, and I want to show the points as well. And the final variable is the final score, so make a variable, and I don't want the final score to be shown yet, so I'm going to hide that. And then we need to make sure that however many points you've got, that's going to be the final score. but that's got to check that the entire time. So I'm going to go on Control, put a forever loop in, go down to my variables and set the final score to the points. So I'm dragging down the points here, and that's going to go in there, and that's going to go on there, and final score. Obviously when we click on the green flag, we'll just position those so they're not in the way of the question slide. Points over there, question number there, and the final score isn't showing up. So we're now going to put on the coding which controls the question number and the score. So first thing we do is to go on Control and pull out an if-then loop. Then we go on operatives, and if you look at the shape, we must make sure not pulling out one of those, but pulling out one of those that's going to fit into there. And finally variables, and click on question number. Then that one, we go from this side, goes into there. We're going to change 50 to a 1. So if question number is 1, that's going to slip into there. Then that's all set up for question number 1. And we now need to do the bit of coding which sorts out, let's go on backdrops. If on slide 1 they press the key number 1, that's the correct answer, and they get a point, and it goes on to slide number 2. But if they put the incorrect answer, a point is taken off and it doesn't go on to the next slide, and each incorrect answer they get a point taken off. Obviously, you know, with only 4 questions it's not going to take them too long to get the correct answer. So let's go back onto our question sprite, back onto code, and click on Control, and we need the same if-then loop. Then we go on to sensing. If key 1 is pressed, if key space is pressed, click on the arrow, and below the alphabet click on number 1. So if the user is clicking key number 1, then obviously that's the correct answer. So we go on to looks and we say correct for 2 seconds. Obviously you can change the time if you want. Then they need to get a point, so we click on the variables and change, not the final score, change points by 1, and obviously they've got the correct answer, so they need to go on to the next slide. So we go on to events and broadcast next slide, which will obviously move on to the second question. So we now need to make sure that if the user presses key 2, 3 or 4, they lose a point and they get an incorrect flashing up, and they don't get the option of going on the next slide. So the quickest way to do this is right click and duplicate that, just put it down below there, and we're going to change this to key 2. If key 2 is pressed, change correct to incorrect. Capital I on that. change the points by -1, and they don't get the option of going on to the next slide. And obviously key 3 and key 4 is exactly the same, so we duplicate that. If key 3 is pressed, incorrect, they lose a point. Right click, duplicate, and if key 4 is pressed, exactly the same. So that's the options done for every single key being pressed. We now join them all together. Let's make that a wee bit smaller to see what we're doing. And all those blocks now go into question number 1. And that's the coding complete for the first question. We're now going to put on the coding for question number 2. So let's remind ourselves. Slide 2, name this fungus. The correct answer is an earth ball. So question 2 is correct. 1, 3 and 4 are incorrect. We go back to our question sprite, click on code, make it a bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. Right click and duplicate, just drag it down below. And just zoom in so we can see what we're doing. So basically all we're doing is altering all the information in this block. So the first thing, this is all question number 2. If key 1 is pressed, this time it's incorrect. So we're going to change correct to incorrect. Incorrect, they lose a point, so change that to -1. And they don't get the option of going on to the next slide, so I'm just going to pull that out there for the minute. Question 2 is correct, so just get rid of the in. They gain a point and they get the option of going on to the next slide. Key 3, nothing needs changing, it's incorrect, and they lose a point. Key 4, exactly the same, it's incorrect, and they lose a point. Now I'm going to code slide number 3, so go on to stage, click on backdrops, and click on slide 3. And the correct answer, name this fungus, is a giant puffball, which is number 2, which fortunately is exactly the same as slide 2. So all we need to do is go on our question sprite, click on code, make it a bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. Right click and duplicate, and the only thing that's going to need changing is question number 3. And that's our third slide coded. We've got one more slide to code, so click on backdrops, and the fourth slide, the correct answer is a fly agaric number 3, and 1, 2 and 4 are the incorrect options. So let's go and code that. Duplicate, so question 4, key 1 this time is incorrect. Change the points by -1. Key 2 is incorrect. Change the points by -1, and you can't go on to the next slide. Key 3 is correct this time, so change the points by 1. and they can go on to the next slide. And key 4, incorrect, and they lose a point. So we've coded slide 4, slide 3, slide 2 and slide 1. The 4 slides have now been coded. I put them side by side so you can see them all. And to add another slide, I can simply copy the coding for the appropriate slide, and then obviously change the slide number. And when we've completed all the question slides, we now need to put the coding in for the last slide, which gives us our total score. It's number 5 on my quiz. So go back to the coding, and just as before, duplicate, and we don't need any of that inside. This is question 5, and we need to go down to variables and hide variable points, hide the variable question number, show the variable final score, that's the important thing, and then go to events and a stop all, because that's the end of the quiz. I'm now going to join all my question blocks together. So number 5 goes on to number 4, just like snapping a jigsaw together. Number 4 goes on to number 3. Number 3 goes on to number 2. Number 2 goes on to number 1. And then they all need to go inside a forever loop, so it's checking the whole time. So I'll put my forever loop there, grab the top of all the blocks, take your time doing this, and just slide it in there, and we can then put a green flag on top. And the last thing we need to do, just to test that the quiz works, so click on the green flag and go to full screen, death cap, 1 point question number 2, earth ball, saying correct down there, points are going up, giant puff ball, points are going up, and fly agaric, so trying to get all the answers right. Final score 3, should have been 4, so we need to work out why that is. Okay, the set final score to points, if we put that on its own with a green flag, death cap, earth ball, giant puff ball, fly agaric. Oh, that seemed to work. We've now got a final score of 4, and obviously go through it again, checking all the wrong answers. So number 1's a death cap, number 2 an earth ball, number 3 a giant puff ball. So I've got 3 points. Now I make a load of mistakes. Let's say that's a death cap. I've lost a mark. Let's say the giant puff ball. I've lost a mark. Let's say it's a shaggy parasol. Down to 0. And get the correct answer, fly agaric. and that's put my points up to 1. So clearly there's a lot more testing needed doing to check all the wrong answers, but that seems to work. Thanks for watching. I've kept the tutorial as basic as I can, so do feel free to use the coding, make your own improvements, and happy coding!